A sudden apocalypse strikes when mysterious creatures emerge and begin wiping out humanity. In the city, Paul scavenges for supplies as sirens wail. He bolts through the streets, avoiding screams and explosions, finally reaching an abandoned house at the outskirts. Inside, his two infant sons wait, his sole reason to survive. 15 years later, Paul's sons, Joseph and Thomas, are now teenagers. They spend their days scavenging but stay hidden at night. At sunset, Joseph secures the windows and calls their dog, Rocco, inside. Thomas returns late after helping the neighboring Rose family, which frustrates Paul. He warns Thomas not to break curfew again. A sibling argument escalates but is quickly stopped. Paul reminds them they must remain disciplined. That night, Rocco growls at the floor, sensing something. Suddenly, creatures slam against the door. Paul and Thomas hold it shut as it shakes violently. Then, the attack stops. Joseph, observing the pattern, deduces that the creatures tested the door, made a real attempt, then left in frustration. By morning, claw marks scar the door. The family scavenges for wood to reinforce it. While Thomas chops, Paul finds Joseph tinkering with an old vehicle. Joseph dreams of escaping their confinement but can't get it to work. Paul makes a few adjustments, and the engine roars to life. Excited, he teaches his sons to drive. Afterward, Paul sends them to salvage windows from a wreck near the river. Thomas, annoyed that he can't visit the farm, blames Joseph for their father's decision. When they pass the farm, Thomas jumps out, leaving Joseph to go alone. Strange discoveries. Paul, taking a break near a waterfall, notices a dark hole in the rocks. Meanwhile, Joseph ties himself to the car and explores an abandoned ship. Inside, he's startled by a swarm of insects bursting from a trash pile. At the farm, Thomas helps with chores but is really there for Charlotte, the farmer's daughter. They take a walk, sharing theories about the apocalypse. When Thomas leaves, Charlotte gives him a tight hug. As night falls, Paul grows worried. Joseph struggles to start the car, while Thomas, running home, slips into a crevice. When Joseph arrives at the farm and doesn't see Thomas, he drives straight home. Upon hearing this, Paul grabs Rocco and heads out to find his son. Trapped in the crevice, Thomas ignites a lighter and spots a monstrous hand reaching from a hole in the wall. He stabs it, causing the creature to screech, alerting Paul and Rocco. Before Thomas can react, another creature grabs his face, suffocating him. Paul arrives just in time, yanking the creature away and killing it. With nightfall too dangerous, they take shelter in the crevice. Suddenly, the ground shakes, creatures are tunneling underground, collapsing the entrance. With no escape, Paul shoves a flare into a hole, causing an explosion that wounds him. At home, Joseph sets a trap, pretending to sleep in a chair tied to a rope. When a creature sneaks in, he triggers the trap, capturing it in a cage. By morning, he realizes his father and brother are still missing. He drives out to search while Thomas, exhausted, digs through the collapsed dirt to pull Paul out. Rocco guides Joseph to them, and together, the brothers carry Paul home. When Joseph sees the caged monster, he explains that it took only 8 seconds to break in last night, the fastest yet. Their behavior is evolving. Thomas theorizes they attacked for revenge, sensing Paul was the one who killed their kind. Determined to understand the creatures, Joseph insists on studying the captive monster, but Thomas wants it dead. Their struggle accidentally frees the creature, which hides under the bed. When it finally emerges, Rocco barks, triggering the creature's transformation. Joseph pins it down, and Thomas beheads it. Joseph dissects the body but learns nothing. Thomas suggests taking Paul to the farm for better medical care. Joseph doubts they'll help, but Thomas insists. Betrayal at the farm. At the Rose farm, Charlotte's parents refuse to take Paul in, fearing their limited supplies won't be enough. They allow Thomas to stay, but Joseph storms off, calling his brother selfish. In anger, Thomas tackles him, nearly choking him before realizing his mistake. Joseph takes their father and drives away, leaving Thomas behind. That night, as Joseph returns home, he notices animals panicked and dirt mounds shifting. The creatures are moving underground. Inside the house, he steps on a rug and falls through a hidden hole. They're already inside. Meanwhile, Thomas, worried about Paul, searches the kitchen for medicine. Charlotte helps him, but as he tries to leave, a farmhand catches him. Accused of stealing, Thomas pleads his case, but the workers tie him up in the barn, turning on music to cover up their intent to harm him. Before they can act, the floor collapses beneath them, creatures burst out, killing them. The farmhouse erupts into chaos. Charlotte's parents wake to find monsters invading their room. Her father fights back but is overpowered. Her mother flees but is caught, coated in the creature's sickly fluid before being killed. From her hiding spot, Charlotte watches in horror as a monster drags her mother's body into the bathroom. At the barn, Thomas manages to break free as a creature approaches, but Charlotte arrives just in time to shoot it. Together, they flee. Seeing the burning farmhouse, Charlotte sorrowfully confirms her parents are dead. Final stand. At home, Joseph throws furniture into the hole, stalling the creatures. Thomas and Charlotte arrive, and Joseph admits he needs help. Paul, weak but conscious, orders them to fight. They gather gasoline, explosives, and drag an old freezer inside. Rocco barks as monsters approach. The group fortifies the house, setting a pile of fuel-soaked debris as a trap. A monster drops from the chimney. Paul fights it off but gets wounded again. Joseph and Thomas take down another one. Paul grabs a gun and shoots at the floor, collapsing it under the attacking horde. Yet some still break through. The brothers kill them swiftly. Paul, severely injured, locks the teens in the freezer for safety. As he remembers holding them as babies, the creatures swarm him. He lights the trap, triggering a massive explosion that brings the house down. A new path. Inside the freezer, the teens endure a chaotic tumble. When they emerge, the house is destroyed. A flaming creature lunges at them, but Charlotte, out of bullets, knocks it down with her gun. The monster crumbles into ash. A few miles away, they stop the car and look at the sky, stars they've never seen before, always having lived in fear of the night. By morning, they return home but realize there's nothing left to rebuild. After burying Paul and their loved ones, they gather supplies and drive toward the valley, hoping to find a new home. Please like and subscribe for more amazing recap movies.